In this episode, we speak with world-renowned expert on benefits and portfolio management, Steve Jenner. Steve shares his insights on the importance of managing portfolios effectively, especially in ensuring organizations are doing the right projects at the right time and in the right way. He discusses the challenges of prioritizing projects with differing goals, like cost reduction, revenue generation, operational improvements, using a strategic bucket approach for better decision-making. Steve also emphasizes the need to align projects with organizational strategy and cautions against overloading portfolios with too many initiatives, which usually lead to inefficiencies. We explore the blurred lines between running and changing the business and highlight the importance of focusing on high-impact, long-term initiatives, even when the benefits may be uncertain. Join us as we unpack the essentials aspects of benefits and portfolio management with Steve Jenner, whose extensive experience as an accomplished author, keynote speaker, consultant and trainer offer valuable perspectives in this complex field. Welcome to this episode of Implementing Best Practice in Business. We're here to help you and your organization understand and implement global best practice to help you face the business challenges of today. Join me, Richard Pharro, CEO of APMG International, in talking to leaders and practitioners who have applied these frameworks and practices to boost their productivity. They're here, willing to share their knowledge and experience to help you learn from them so you can do the same to make you more competitive in today's market. My guest today is Steve Jenner. Steve is an author, keynote speaker, practitioner, consultant and trainer. He is recognized as a world guru in benefits management and is one of the world's leading authorities in portfolio management. He developed his understanding of benefits while working in the UK government, where he developed the benefits-led portfolio management approach, which won the Civil Service Finance Award, and he was anointed the Rottweiler of Benefits Management by the CIO. He's a very candid, some would say outrageous speaker when invited to deliver a keynote. He wrote the definitive guide to benefits management about 12 years ago, and a refreshed version is due today. When he isn't eulogizing on the horrors of project and program management, he enjoys riding his motorcycle in the UK or Australia, or long-distance walking in Spain and Italy. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, Richard. My God. I should say anointed is the right term because it followed a meeting with God. That's Sir Gus O'Donnell. He was the head of the UK Civil Service at the time. So we had the meeting with God. He gave us our award, and hence the Rottweiler of Benefits Management.
Excellent. So tell me, Steve, why managing portfolios? Why do we need it? What business problem are we trying to solve with portfolios?
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental question for anything we do is what's the problem you're trying to solve. Answering that question, I think first of all we need to think of what is portfolio management, because there are differing. It means different things to different people. Primarily, it's about what a portfolio just means a collection. So it's a collection of something. In this case, it's projects and programs, and it's really about three things. One is doing the right things. So it's an investment management approach that seeks via prioritization and portfolio optimization to ensure that the portfolio contains whatever we mean by right, but the projects and programs that will deliver, or at least promise to deliver, the optimum strategic bang for our buck. So that's the first, doing the right things. It's then about doing them right, because we often see organizations struggling to deliver projects and programs. And in many ways, sometimes the root cause lies in the project and the program, but quite often these are external factors. The organization has only got so much capacity to deliver, and yet we start too many projects and they start competing for resources, and then it's a bit like cars on the motorway. They flow beautifully until you get or 2% too many, and then suddenly you have these phantom traffic jams. So the job of portfolio management is to remove those barriers to delivery, and hence it's about doing the projects and programs at the right time, scheduling or staggering delivery. So it's about doing the right projects, doing them in the right time, and doing them the right way. So the performance matches the promise. And yet, as I say, in practice, you find organizations investing in too many projects. Projects just get started. We can't stop them. They go on and on. You know, these ghost projects and zombie projects. And most organizations still struggle to make the linkage between the portfolio, between strategy and delivery. And I was at a session with the PMI a few years ago, and Antonio Nieto Rodriguez was talking about why don't senior managers take an interest in projects and programs. And the audience was, oh, it's terrible. You know, senior managers just don't get it. They just don't understand. And I said, but if you can't show the strategic contribution your project is going to make, why would senior managers be interested? You know, it just, don't bring it to me. I've got other things to focus on. So it's very much about, as I say, making sure we do the right things and that we do them the right way and at the right time.
But Steve, you know, you've done a lot of work with consultancy, you did a lot of work in the civil service. How can you compare apples and pears in terms of that prioritization? So somebody says, you know, we desperately need a new IT system, and someone else says, we desperately need to have a better training program, and someone else says, we need a new building. So you've got those three desperate, critical, urgent, must-do things. How do you prioritize in that environment? Well, you know, you can follow the standard guidance, which is cost-benefit analysis. You do you work out what your costs, you work out your benefits, you put the stuff into the calculation, you find out which ones have the greatest NPV, and you invest in order of NPV. But clearly, you only have to think about that for about 5 minutes to realize it doesn't work, because most of these projects that you've just outlined, you know, what are the benefits? And if they're not financial, how do we compare? How can you evaluate, as you say, you know, a customer engagement initiative compared with, you know, a payroll maintenance program or a road maintenance program? I mean, the answer, it's actually an integral part of portfolio management, is that you categorize your portfolio. You split your portfolio into categories or investment drivers, or as Professor Bob Cooper in Canada refers to them as strategic buckets. So you know, depending upon, you might say, well, you'll have a bucket for cost reduction or, you know, revenue generation. You'll have a bucket for keeping the lights on, maintaining business as usual. You'll have a bucket for, if you've got an imperative to improve customer care, you'd have a bucket for customer care. And so you work out, what is the primary investment driver of this project or program? What are we trying to achieve? What's the primary driver? And then, so you have cost reduction projects competing with other cost reduction projects, revenue generation with other revenue generation, keeping, you know, the mandatory stuff competes with other mandatory projects, and so forth. And Cooper says that the first portfolio, after you've decided what your portfolio categories should be, you say, well, we've got whatever your budget is, how much money do we put into each of those buckets, each of those categories? And so he said, that's a strategic decision. How much money do we want to put into cost saving? So you have a project that says, you know, we're going to save all this money. You say, well, great, but we've got no money left. We've invested all our cost savings money. Come back next year, or we might want to free up some money. And so you might well keep a contingency within that bucket and then allocate it over a period of time. So portfolio categorization is the kind of approach to, or a way, or the strategy to address that apples and pears challenge
that lies at the very heart of portfolio management, because, as you say, the driver will vary. What we're seeking to achieve: customer satisfaction, customer engagement, staff engagement, maintain the roads, educate the children. So, if you're looking at government, say government as a whole, these decisions are made, but then how much money do we put into defence? How much do we put into education? How much do we put into health? So these are strategic decisions. And just as you need to have some framework for determining how much you're going to put into each of those buckets, within those organizations and within private sector organizations, you need to have a way of saying, or even in, say, for example, if you have an IT portfolio, you've got to say, well, okay, but what are the drivers behind the investment in IT? It's keeping the lights on, keeping the payroll system operational. It's helping make the organization more efficient. It's helping make the organization more effective. And so you design or identify these high-level benefit buckets, and then the projects compete. They're prioritized within each of those buckets.
So I understand the theory. I understand that. And thank you for that explanation. It's a good way of thinking about prioritization. But the way you describe it, I mean, what is the scope of managing portfolios? Is it across the organization? So literally within a portfolio, do you have everything from the governance part of the organization through to the operational side of it, through to sales and marketing? Or are portfolios associated with new initiatives, one-off initiatives that have a start and an end?
Sure.
What's the scope?
Well, the reality is that what I'm really talking about is the portfolio of projects and programs, and what we call other related work. So it's the small scale initiatives, not the business as usual, but your small scale initiatives. And the reason I say that is because there are some people that say, no, this should be the whole organization. And my only problem with that is that, and in fact, there's been a couple of books in that area. So they were talking about all discretionary spend going into the portfolio. The problem is, I say, hi, you've got a problem. I've got the answer. And yet we haven't applied it effectively in the portfolio. Many organizations still struggle to apply portfolio management. And so for me to suddenly say I've got an answer to the whole organization's problems when we haven't sorted that out in the projects and programs, I think is slightly optimistic. So I think we start with your projects and programs. You start with your projects and programs, except the example I gave was IT. When you manage an IT portfolio, usually you're not managing just the projects and programs. You're managing the whole IT spend. You're looking at the relationship between the legacy spend, the infrastructure, and your applications and the new ideas, the research and development. So then you have to say, well, how much do we want to put into the legacy? How much do we want to put into the new stuff? How much do we want to look at the long scale, the long time scale research and development type initiatives, where clearly our cost benefit appraisal is, because who knows? And someone once said to me, Steve, if I followed what you're talking about, we wouldn't have had radar, because we wouldn't do any of this high impact but low probability. And I thought, well, you would, because one of those portfolio categories is for the high impact, low probability stuff, the long time scale research and development type bucket. So it does extend beyond just projects and programs. It does extend into business as usual, because you'll have projects and programs delivering the change required to maintain business as usual. So the lines are blurred. It's not quite so simple as the old OGC model of run the business, change the business. Part of running the business is maintaining the roads. Absolutely. So it's a combination of the two, but I think it's fundamental. The focus is very much on our projects and programs. That it's like the kind of change agenda ultimately depends upon the objectives that we set for the portfolio, which should be driven by the organization's strategic objectives. So we start with the strategic objectives. What do we want our projects and programs to deliver to contribute towards our strategic objectives? Those are then the portfolio objectives. The portfolio objectives, if it's an IT portfolio or a business new product development portfolio, or an HR portfolio, however you cut the thing up, or a portfolio for the organization as a whole. Because the point is, every organization has a portfolio, but they may not manage it as such. And so what this is about saying, okay, what is the best way to manage the portfolio? Now, I was on a podcast once, and they said, the best way is that it should be all the projects and programs in an organization. And so I typed in a question and said, so what happens if you've got 10,000 projects? And they said, oh, yes, good point. That means you have a rather large PMO. No. The focus of the portfolio needs then to be on the big strategic stuff. The other stuff should be delegated down the chain. If you've got basic IT projects and programs, then they can be delivered within the IT department. You don't want your corporate portfolio swamped. And so that's very much kind of tying into Antonio's thinking about a focused organization, focusing on the top 25, 30, or 40 projects, those with the greatest strategic impact, and then having sub-portfolios at functional level or business unit level or departmental level for the change programs that really are just a kind of about local impact.
But all of those things, I mean, I think, I've heard you talk in the past about an investment management approach, which I think is what you're saying. You put the money where thing is. But if you're competing for resources within the organization and the organization only has a limited number of people, then it doesn't matter whether it's the corporate portfolio or the group portfolio or the division portfolio.
Absolutely.
You're still competing for those people's time and effort. So, aren't you just ducking the issue by saying, here's a corporate portfolio, but have all these little things down here, because everyone wants to be at the top table. Everyone wants to be in the boardroom. Everyone wants to do the strategic stuff.
Yeah.
And if the guys aren't then keeping the lights on or they're not keeping the system patched, you get hacked and everyone says, but that wasn't a priority.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can be glib about this, but I mean, the reality is these are complex issues. In large, complex organizations, portfolio is not a magic wand. It's not a silver bullet that's going to automatically solve the problems. If you've got a silo-based organization where people pursue silo-based objectives and will not communicate and don't share resources, and our ability to work collaboratively is limited, then clearly portfolio management is going to have the same issues. The answer to the kind of the word or the picture that you paint, Richard, where you have departments following their own objectives, that applies. Forget portfolio management for a minute. That applies within those organisations as a part of their strategic planning process, anyway. And that's why normally the themes is that you have delegated budgets and delegated authority down the chain, but there is some consistency, or there need to be checks in place that your each division, each function is following and setting objectives that are consistent with those that are above it. So there's, rather than, I suppose it's like a waterfall, the idea of waterfall, that continual strategic planning that gets cascaded down to the next level, and so each level's planning is informed by the level above. But it remains a problem, and that is often a cultural issue rather than a process issue. So it's an issue. Well, it's an issue of structure and it's an issue of process, but also an issue of culture. So portfolio management, if we're focusing at the corporate level, I say, well, what I'm saying is that for most complex organisations, you're probably talking about a central focused portfolio, and then IT has its own portfolio, but they then need to be coordinated. And so that's a fundamental purpose of a PMO, is to make sure that those barriers to delivery, you say, there's always a limit on what we can do. And it's making sure that whatever that limit is, we use that limit, those resources, to the greatest impact, so that we prioritize initiatives on the basis of the impact that they will have. So if I need Richard to review each business case, or each, I don't know, you're a gateway through which every project has to pass, then I want to make sure that we use your time looking at the most important projects. And so that's part of that kind of what's called portfolio staggering or project staggering, or the way that we schedule our initiatives so that we optimize the impact as a whole. Easy to say, not quite so easy to do in practice, particularly, I say, in large organizations. But those issues will apply both within the portfolio and within the kind of business as usual.
So I think I understand that. So I can understand we got this portfolio of stuff, programs, projects, strategic, operational, divisional, whatever you want to call it. How does that fit in with managing benefits? Because I know, as well as the portfolio stuff, you've done a lot of stuff on managing benefits. So, if you're trying to identify benefits across this whole range of activity, even if they are in buckets, how do you bring that together and inform the board, inform the decision makers on how big a bucket of money should have linked to benefits that could range across the whole gamut of an organization?
I think the first point to make is that if you want to do portfolio management well, it needs to be benefit-led. Benefits are the rationale. Everything else is a means to an end. And so I remember the Hobbs report a few years ago in the States for the PMI looked at the functions of PMOs, portfolio management offices, and they found there were 27 functions, and benefits came third from bottom. And my response was, well, if you're not doing benefits, what are you doing? Everything else is a means to an end. The end is achieving that strategic impact. It's about benefits realization. So portfolio needs to be benefits led, but if you want to do benefits well, it has to be portfolio led. It has to be done at a portfolio level, because otherwise you get one project done well and another project done well, and then suddenly the next one not, and the next one not so much, and the next one not so much, and they reinvent the wheel. They spend lots of time justifying what they're going to do anyway, trying to dream up benefits. We get double counting of benefits, inconsistent approaches. By doing it at a portfolio level, a consistent approach to benefits management is more efficient and it's more effective. So that's the first point. The second point is that we overcomplicate this issue. And I was on a podcast a while ago with a good friend of mine, and he said, look, we've got the portfolio, we've got the objectives, and then we work out what the KPIs would be, and then we have projects and programs, and they deliver benefits, and the benefits kind of are linked to the KPIs. This is Steve, what do you think? I said, no. You have strategic objectives. Okay, and you say, look, we can't achieve all these strategic objectives through our business usual. We need our portfolio to deliver some of these strategic objectives. So they are the portfolio objectives. That's why the portfolio exists, to deliver these objectives. One objective. Two, you have measures of success. What measurable improvement will demonstrate that we've achieved these objectives? Measurable improvement, benefits. That's what benefits are. Whether you call it benefit, impact, outcome, results, value, we're talking about the same thing. So it's portfolio, benefits, and initiatives, projects and programs, and other related work. In other words, so we know what the objectives are. We identify the benefits that will be measurable improvements that demonstrate our objectives have been achieved, and then we commission our projects and programs to achieve those benefits. And if you say, well, that's just too easy, Steve, that doesn't work in the real world. Second time today I've had to do this. Reach forward. Well, I think Google is the real world. I think Netflix is the real world. I think LinkedIn is the real world. I think Samsung is the real world. John Doerr, measure what matters. OKRs, the simple idea that drives 10 times growth. Now, we can always debate whether that 10 times, that seems a little bit high. But what are OKRs are about? They're saying in any organization, this all starts with Andy Grove at Intel, but you start with the objective. What are you trying to achieve? You then identify your key results that will demonstrate you've achieved what you set out to achieve. That's your benefits. And then you do initiatives and programs to deliver those results. So whether you call it objectives, results, initiatives, or objectives, benefits, initiatives, it's the same thing, the same principle. Now, the actual working it out will be slightly different, depending upon which level you do it at. But, that's it. Don't overcomplicate it.
If I remember correctly, Steve, the OKRs, though, is about stretch targets. It's not about just achieving your business case. So how do you reconcile that? I've got my business case. It's a soft business case. I can achieve it quite easily. But OKRs say that if I'm doing that, I'm not really doing enough.
Absolutely. It's exactly what John Doerr says at Google and these other places. 70%. If you're achieving less than 70%, or more than 70%, you're not trying hard enough. So if you achieve all your objectives, then he said you're not trying hard enough. It's about building a culture there. He's talking about of exceeding target, and I said you sent me down to Cardiff a few years ago now to talk to our friends at the Better Business Case people. And, I talked to them and I said, look, guys, our business case should be realistic, but it shouldn't over-egg them. So we should be able to beat target. Shouldn't things get better? As we learn more, shouldn't we identify more benefits? Shouldn't the risk go down over time? Shouldn't the achievability improve? Shouldn't the attractiveness improve? Shouldn't we beat target? And I thought, sat down, and the guy came up after me and said, I'm going to disagree with Steve. You should never beat target because you're just raising expectations. And I said, shame on you. Shame on you. This is taxpayers' money. And you're saying, don't do better than? It's insane. But it does drive that mindset about don't achieve. Everyone should be aiming, because our job, wherever we work, is to make things better. I say to people, you're the only profession on this earth that openly admits to making things worse. You say, if you've been sick for 6 months, the organisation would be better off. It's insane. And most people come to project management to make things better. I'm a huge fan of project and program management. It is the answer. It's not a problem. It is the answer, but only when it's done well. It's directed in the right way. And I think that John Doerr stuff, Rich, is absolutely right. We should set aspirational targets, but it'll only work if you don't have a blame culture. If you're saying, Steve, you better deliver 100, otherwise you're sacked, then, I'm going to make sure it looks like we got 100, but I'm not going to aim for 120. And so it should be a case of, look, we employ them because we believe in them, we invest in their development, we invest in our projects, and we expect a return on that investment, whilst at the same time accepting, in some cases, it won't transpire. But the aspiration should always be to do better than planned, to exceed target, to come in under cost, over deliver. That should be that's what it's about. And ultimately, if you want to get, and my experience is, if you want to get on in this world, wherever you are, it's a competitive world. If you deliver on your promises, if you exceed delivery, then you get noticed. So,
and on that point, Steve, with the new publication of managing portfolios, we're launching a certification scheme and a training program. So, what do you think people will get out of those?
Well, what do people gain? They gain. I think it's the experience of going on training courses or studying for an exam brings certain benefits of its own about the process that you go through, by getting your head around a process, by finding a framework that makes sense to you. But the kind of outputs or outcomes from it, the benefits from, I think, are that you're able to demonstrate that you have an understanding of, the principles, the practices, the techniques, more than an understanding that you can apply them. I think, I would argue that the guide represents current best practice that, it's based upon not just what Steve says, because otherwise they say, well, you're some Steve Jenner clone that shouts at people a lot, and but no, that what the PMI says is there, what the APMs say, what Bent Flupius research says, what John Doerr says in OKRs. So all the kind of the best practice that I can find, hopefully we've distilled it, we've synthesized it into something that represents current best practice. And I think that's the important thing, because things always change, things move on. So I think you get that awareness, that understanding of what is good practice and how do we apply it, because the guide has got examples from the real world, so you get an understanding of that. I said the exam, I was talking to a friend in New Zealand not so long ago, and he said on one of the exam schemes they had, he trained his people, or that he gave them a year to study for it. And he said he saw them after the exam, and they were in the pub and they were sitting there with their heads in their hands. Oh my God, it was terrible. They passed the exam, but it had been a dispiriting experience for them. And I thought, that's not the way it should be. And I pondered on that for a while. And as we developed the exam scheme for managing portfolios, to make sure it's targeted, it's focused, because managing portfolios said we should be focused, about focusing on the most important things. And so that's what we've done in the exam scheme. So it's much shorter than a traditional scheme. It's a single exam. It's 90 minutes rather than 3 hours. And I've tried to avoid all the kind of angels on pinheads type. Can you remember what's on page? And I know we don't do that. We're not supposed to do that. It can slip into that. So I've tried to make it far more the really important stuff, and make the course itself, or the study for the materials, integral to the course. So the vanilla training materials, for example, the standard training materials that we give to our colleagues in the training organizations, I was saying to James this week, this is not the standard that I've produced. This is what I would use if I was running a training course. So most of the graphics from the book are there. Quizzes are there. I put the sample exam is embedded within those training materials, so that you don't wait till the end. So you do each section, and then you see what sorts of questions come up, and you have a bit of practice in addressing those questions. So this is about learning as you go. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm an accountant by training, so I err on the side of caution. Yeah. So when you say that managing benefits has gone to print today, I said, when you say today, Richard, what are you referring to the day this video will be shown, or is it? So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think I think people will find it less of a challenge, in the sense that it's a challenge that isn't related to the subject. It is far more focused on the subject matter, and that if you're a reasonable human being, you should sail through, which is exactly what we want. We're not trying to make it difficult. We're just trying to test people that you understand and can apply the basic principles and concepts.
Just to answer your question, as an accountant,
right? Yeah.
It's the 16th of October, 2024.
Okay. Right. I just said to James, I'm not counting my chickens, and he said, funnily enough, I've just said the same thing to Richard. So,
see, Steve, as always, fascinating talking to you. Many thanks for your time. I know you're very busy. You're doing all this consultancy work around the world. You're rearing people up at conferences. So, thanks for finding the time. Yep. And thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated. Best of luck.
Thank you for listening. We're always keen to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. You can find all the information in the show notes below. Please visit apmg-international.com to find out more about our accredited training and the certifications that support them that are related to the topics discussed in this series. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I look forward to you joining future episodes while we continue our exploration into best practice and the benefits it brings to global business. Thank you.